Hello and welcome to the latest EnvCast episode. EnvCast is a Society for the Environment podcast, bringing you environmental professionals in conversation each month. Each episode is designed to provide insight into the life of registered environmental professionals, featuring experts from across a wide range of sectors and disciplines. We explore what they do, why they do it, how they got to where they are now, and their future ambitions. Each guest has verified their environmental credentials by achieving Chartered Environmentalist, Registered Environmental Practitioner, or Registered Environmental Technician registration. To learn more about the Society for the Environment or our environmental registrations, please visit socenv.org.uk. That's socenv.org.uk. Enjoy the episode. Hello, I'm Phil from the Society for the Environment and welcome to this month's EnvCast episode. I think a good portion of this episode will be focused on a sector that not many will instantly associate with environmental protection and environmental careers, but it's an excellent way of showcasing the different environmental careers that are available and the fact that environmental careers should be and are in all sectors. So as many of you will have heard in the last episode with Rob Bradley, I'm referring to the armed forces or military. Hopefully our guest can correct me on the right term to use. But our special guest gained their Chartered Environmentalist registration via their membership of the Chartered Institute of Building, or CIOB for short, in 2019. I'm very pleased to welcome Peter Egan to EnvCast. Thank you very much for joining us, Peter.
Thank you for the invite.
It's very good to have you. As always on EnvCast, to start proceedings, I'm going to hand over to our guest to give us a flavour of what you currently do in your job. So straight over to you, Peter.
Oh, thank you. So, my name is Peter Egan. I work for a part of Defence called the UK Strategic Command. And my job title doesn't sound very climate change or sustainability, is requirements manager. So I work within major infrastructure projects for Defence, so anything over £10 million. And that can be anything from a school to data centres to accommodation to new camp facilities or refurbing camps, or anything along them lines, which needs major investment. And that also comes in with solar farms, geothermal, air source heat pumps, and all these other things which come into projects. So my job is setting the requirements and making sure that the right requirements are in a project so it has the outcomes and requirements Defence wants it to have. And I do that in that due to the fact that I have a background in sustainability, is I help set the requirements for the projects from a climate change and sustainability angle. So if any of you know about infrastructure projects, we work against the REBA 2020 process. A big part of that in the early stages is the sustainability strategy, and I work with helping make sure that they're set in the right way to deliver the right outcomes long term for our projects. And then outside that, as we've mentioned, I also run a number of organisations with an organisation called the Institution of Royal Engineers. I run their sustainability forum as the founder and secretary of it. And I also work with a number of other charities, helping them hit their sustainable outcomes.
So there's a lot going on then.
Definitely, yeah.
Crikey. So what does a standard day look like? Is there a standard day?
Well, there's never a standard day in Defence. Every day is different, but so a number of, as with any major job has these days, is you've got the emails in the morning, meetings throughout the day, and stakeholder engagement is a huge piece of what I do. So it's sitting down, talking to the people who are delivering our projects, the architects who are designing our projects, the parts of Defence who are the clients, the end users, and making sure that we're going to hit the long-term sustainable goals Defence has, while enabling Defence to operate, enable Defence to live, because we have a lot of personnel, and making sure that we don't have a negative impact in other parts of the wider organisation. And it's aligning them with our long-term goals. And Defence is aligned to the REBA sustainable outcomes within the requirements for embodied energy, embodied carbon, water, power, and all these different things. So we align ourselves with the REBA sustainable outcomes to 2030. And that's a big part of what I do, is making sure that happens, and also make sure we don't spend too much money in doing it. So justifying the spend against the public purse is a big part of what I do as well.
And before we go any further, it's worth noting to those who aren't watching on video that there is some background noise. And the reason behind that is because Peter is calling from a park in Bath somewhere, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I'm on a family holiday and I'm just taking a break to sit down and come and speak to yourself.
It's very much appreciated. So if you hear a bit of background noise, that's the wind whistling past. Luckily, it's not too windy today, but apologies for any background noise. So I'm very intrigued about the various different projects you mentioned there. Now, when people think of the military, they don't necessarily think about building schools and things like that and infrastructure projects. How does that kind of thing fall into the military world and what you get up to?
So the military is a huge organisation. So 2% or just below 2% of the UK landmass is owned by defence. So either as the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, or the organisation I work with in UK Strategic Command, or on that. But we also have a huge footprint across the world. So the Falkland Islands, the Ascension, Gibraltar, Cyprus, across the Middle East, Singapore. All around the world, we have these footprints of defence, and all of them need to align to defence's sustainable outcomes. So we have to work with them projects, make sure that they're going to have the long-term operational requirements we need for them, and then they fit in there. But when we go to these places, we also send our people and their families. So if we send people with families, we have to put schools in, we have to build them houses, we have to build community centres, swimming pools, all these lovely things what come because we will create small towns wherever we go. And we try and map in as many as the modern day principles into that as we can.
So generally speaking, the infrastructure projects that you put in place are for the UK military themselves rather than for local communities and that kind of thing. I wasn't sure where it fitted in.
Yeah, so it's mainly delivered to enable defence to operate. And then when defence is there, it will work with other projects. So I like to call them my aggressive holidays. Whenever I've been away to parts of the world where the defence gets sent, my last big one was to South Sudan. I got sent to South Sudan, which is a war-torn country, unfortunately, to build hospitals for a region of about 200,000 square kilometres to help what we called in IDP, so people who've been disturbed from different areas. They're from South Sudan, but they've been displaced and they're moving around the country to help support them and the UN workers who were there to assist them and provide them with safety and welfare and all the other things.
And you mentioned things like solar farms. And I remember very recently on, I think, a TV program of some description, they were at, I think it was an airbase of somewhere around the UK, and they had just completed their solar farm. Is that something that's quite a big focus at the moment for the military?
So it is. Sorry, the wind just built up a little bit behind me. There's two big things actually. Defence is looking at a lot of different things, but two of the big programs we're looking at the moment is energy generation. So solar farms are a big part of that, and converting all our fleets to EV. So them two things do work in comparison because we're creating a lot of energy we have a lot of real estate we can put solar farms on. The Army itself has done a huge project in putting solar farms all over its bases. If you go around Salisbury Plain, there's lots of solar farms by defence around there. Air bases as well, RAF Leman and some of the other air bases around the country are also looking at putting solar farms in. And you'll see a lot more of that happening over the next few years. But at the same time, we're also uplifting all our electrical capabilities to put in EV facilities to turn all our hire cars and white fleet into EVs over the next 5 years. So
over the next 5 years, quite a project, I imagine. Quite a project.
Yeah.
Have we got any electric tanks yet?
Well, they say that the defence has gone 100% sustainable when we have a solar panel tank. We're not there yet. But people are looking at it, and there's a lot of hybrid versions coming out for different parts of our fleet because we have vehicles for everything you can think about, where they're looking at a mixture of generation and battery supply. People are looking at hydrogen. There's lots of different options they're looking at across our fleets.
That was a very civilian question, wasn't it? What about the tanks? Let's talk about tanks.
Tanks, yeah. Well, we are looking. There's a gentleman out there called General Wardlaw, who's the leader for most of our sustainable operational effect. Over the last couple of years, there's been loads of papers and strategic documents which are online. You can go onto the MLD pages and find them, looking at what we're going to do across our future. And one part of that is self-sustainment. So we want to be able to deploy to different parts of the world, be that in aid relief, refugees, or unfortunately, peacekeeping, or unfortunately, if it's a war situation, where we can be self-supportive. We're not a drain on the local community. And what we're looking at doing that is be able to create our own water bottling plants. That's one thing we're doing at the moment. So we're not shipping water in, and we're not taking a drain on the local community. Growing our own food, creating our own power, creating our own fuels is a program we're looking at the moment. We're even looking at creating our own weapon systems, so you can use energy weapon systems over bullet systems, and that also works with drones and stuff like that. So it's not always in an aggressive war foot; it could be in a defensive one to protect people and stuff. And that's something people don't really think defence does. Most of my career, I've been in the defence for 26 years. I have been to a few war zones, but the majority of my career has been about aid relief, disaster relief, securing regions for local policing, helping build up local communities. I'm an engineer within defence, and very rarely have we been on an aggressive footing. It's always been on a supportive footing. So we do a lot of work in that area. Yeah.
There's a lot of career options available.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that you're not the only chartered environmentalist within the military realms. So I imagine that, for all of these different projects, you're it's not like, how do I put this? You're clearly not doing all of it. You
No.
rely on expertise from different areas. So when you're looking at, solar farms and things like that, you're looking at energy experts and that kind of thing. I imagine that kind of network within the military must be quite strong.
Yeah, there's quite over the last. So about 2 years ago, Defence created their sustainability strategy. There was a gentleman called General Nuji wrote this strategy. In fact, it'll be 3 years ago now. Wrote this strategy, and that sort of put. You could say environmental sustainability used to be a bit of a dirty word. It was like, why do we need to worry about that? We're defence. We're here to, security. That's what we're here sort of to do. And he wrote this report, this sustainability strategy, and he pretty much put sustainability and climate change on steroids within defence. So the last 2 years, they've been a huge drive for it. There's now organisations throughout defence with sustainability and climate change teams and energy efficiency teams in. We have a support organisation called the Defence Infrastructure Organisation, which has 3 or 4 big teams that are looking at resilience, the long-term goals for defence on sustainability and energy generation, and we're really investigating that the 17 sustainable goals from the UN. So we're looking at each element of them. How do we impact regions we work in? How do we impact local communities? How can we promote gender parity? All these different things what fit into that sustainability bubble. It's not just energy and carbon. It's how do we work as a community? How do we have that cultural change within defence? One thing we're doing at the moment is generating training programs. So I've just been helping out writing some training programs to everyone in defence, be them military, civil servants, partners. We'll have to do this training program to understand what sustainability means within defence and what our aspirations and the way we want our culture to be, to embed it into everything we do.
Okay.
So lots of people out there, lots of different job roles in support of it.
Yeah, it's pretty wide-reaching. So, where you are at the moment, you're looking at your fairly high-level roles and that kind of thing, and embedding that within the structure of the military, essentially. So, what kind of skills and qualifications and experience did you need to get to where you are now?
So I joined the defence as a 17-year-old youngster, straight out of school, just done my A-levels, and I joined an organisation called the Corps of Royal Engineers, pretty much on an apprenticeship. So I joined. I was doing an architectural apprenticeship, and I did that at a place called the Royal School of Military Engineering in Chatham. I did that for a number of years. I went on a second apprenticeship, so that sort of took me to a level 3 qualification, and then went on a second one, which took me to a level 5 in building studies. And then my career's moved on as I've been promoted up the ranks and got more senior appointments. I became a construction manager, where actually I embedded sustainability into all the different pieces because it's a huge interest of mine at the time. And then as I moved into more senior appointments, I was then able to embed it into my teams and into the policies of my teams and into the organisations. I actually went back as the senior lecturer to the school where I did my apprenticeship, which is a military school, and I did my master's in sustainability while I was there. And that's when I became a chartered environmentalist. And I developed the syllabus for all the sustainability requirements for all the military engineers who would do my trade. So I made sure that was into their BEng, they do a BEng course. And we also have a senior course, which does an MEng. So we wrote sustainability and climate change and their impact in defence into all them courses. And then when I left that role and went to the role I went in now, I thought, well, we could do better than that. So what I did is I worked with the what we call the commandant, so the person who runs all the training for the Royal Engineers. I worked with him and we wrote sustainability into all their job trades. So there's 9,000 military engineers within defence, and we wrote sustainability into every one of their jobs.
Good.
Yeah.
It's quite a journey to hear about. Excellent stuff.
Yeah.
That's how you got to where you are. In terms of, I don't know how it works in terms of the progression pathways these days. What kind of, if people wanted to make a difference in terms of sustainability within the military, whatever that looks like, what kind of pathways are available to them?
So there's two sides to the coin. There's the side what wears uniform, and there's the side what doesn't. So the military isn't just lots of people who run around in uniform. That's what my family think is what I do, but pretty much that's one side of the military is the people in uniform. There's a huge support network to that, though, which is the civil service, and lots of the key sustainability trades are actually sat in the civil service. So a really good way is to join defence as a civil servant and go into one of the key sustainability teams. As I said, there's a sustainability team in every division of defence now. So be that medical, infrastructure, logistics, all these different parts of defence in all the 4 organisations, so Army, Navy, Air Force and UK Stratcon, all have their own sustainability teams. They work under a senior team called the MOD Sustainability Directorate, which is run by a gentleman called James Clare. And each one of them have there. So there's loads of job opportunities to get in there and get involved. But also, defence know we're not the experts. So we partner quite a lot with industry. We partner with other people who work in this sector. So working with organisations what partner with defence, what do research with defence, is another really good way of changing the sector, because there's a lot of money sat in defence for research, innovation, because we want to be at the forefront of what we do. And then on the military side, if that's the way you want to go, the military has huge opportunities within it. As we said, we're now embodying sustainability into all our trades. So we're doing it. We've just done it within the Royal Engineers, but General Wardlaw, as I said, he's doing it pan defence. So he's writing sustainability into everyone's job trades. There's now, as part of core mandatory training we have to do every year, as I said, we're just developing a programme what will come in later this year about sustainability, and it beds it to everything we do, from recycling to the way you use energy to the way you do your job. That part is getting embodied in. So if people want to come in, it's making it your mantra. Is when you come to work with defence, be your mantra. And that's the way I've always been, is defence work quite happily in the past. As I said, in the last 2 years, they've been on steroids with sustainability. But in the past, I could have quite happily ignored it and nobody had batted an eyelid. I haven't done that for the last easily 15 to 20 years. I've sneakily embedded it into everything I've done. I did sustainability on lots of my major projects for years. I just forgot to tell anyone I was doing it. And that way I made sure it happened. That was my personal mantra. I placed it in there. So that was an example. We did a project in the Falklands, building huge accommodation on mountaintops in the middle of nowhere. I carbon offsetted all the cement within the project, and then told everyone afterwards we'd done it.
Okay.
And we just did it by changing the design. We incorporated some planting of trees in there, what we just did as part of the project. And then we just said, oh, by the way, we've carbon offsetted all the cement, CO2 in the cement.
Which I imagine generally goes down quite well.
Yeah, it's an added bonus. But if I'd have said in the at the beginning, and I said the defence has changed now, but back at that time, that was about 7 years ago. If I'd have said at the time, I'm picking this cement just because of its carbon content, they probably wouldn't have got the investment financially or buy-in senior at the time to get that. But when I said, actually, it's just the best product for the project, that got in, and that is quite a common way of working this outside defence. In the industry, actually, not always saying you've done it for a sustainable reason is a way to drive a project through, because it's the best way of doing it, and then it's just the added value, the sustainability on top. So instead of using the word sustainable, you're just being sustainable and you're getting it done. But you had it value. The world's changing though, and you get that buy-in more and more and more with sustainability, and I'm seeing that in the other works I do with charities and institutions. We're now getting that buy-in, which we didn't have 5 or 6 years ago.
I think I'm going to come to that in a minute, but before we get there, what's your favourite part of what you do?
I love having an impact and doing something different every day. And that is probably one of the biggest things my job does bring. You have a huge impact just because of the size of defence. It throws a new problem at you every day, which is always, gives you something to get your teeth in. And there's a huge comradeship in defence. Everyone's sort of aligned to the same aspiration. And we all have different ways and different angles on that aspiration, but that teamwork, that huge piece of working together towards a central goal is something I've loved about my job the whole time I've been in it.
And you mentioned it there pretty much, but you feel like you make a difference.
Yeah, we make a huge difference. As I said, the one in South Stan building hospitals for huge people, we changed the way the projects were delivered to make them have a reduced impact, because logistics is an issue in that part of the world. But I've done the same, as I said, in the Falkland Islands, in Middle East, Canada, around Europe, UK. One of the things we did with the South Sudan project is when we first went there, we realised we were having quite a large logistics burden, and we tried to do some training with the local region to try and embed construction skills back into the people who'd lost it through war-torn activities. And what we realised was the skills we had were the wrong skills to teach them, because it created a large supply chain. So when we came back to the UK for a recovery period, retrain period, what we did is we worked with the heritage section in the UK and retaught my personnel, my delivery teams, how to work with vernacular materials, how to make adobe, cobham, and how to do it from bare materials, from clay and lime. So when we went back, that's what we taught the locals, because they had lots of clay and lots of lime. So we taught them how to make buildings out of it, how to make bricks, tiles, paint, all that little stuff. But so they could create their own supply chain, create their own industry, and have a low carbon impact. So that's a huge way defence can have an impact on assisting people across the world.
Yeah, I suppose with the resources available, you're able to make those adaptations, do the retraining, and make a difference that way. Sounds good. Yeah. So you mentioned that you're involved in other organisations through board positions and that kind of thing. Is that something you're particularly keen on in terms of spreading the word?
As I said, I'm an impact-driven person. So I love to have an impact. A great way to have an impact is to get in at the top and change the way the organisation works. So I've sat, as I said, I was a trustee for 5 years for the Institution of Royal Engineers and the Royal Engineer Museum, which were sort of partner organisations. Within that, I was able to embed sustainability into the organisation, which it didn't have before. Which was a great piece to do. I work as I said, as you said at the beginning, I've got my Chartered Environmentalist through the Chartered Institute of Builders. I sit on a lot of their committees, one of them being their sustainability committee. And the idea is to help change the construction industry and embed sustainable principles into that. And I'm doing some training with them later this year to help with that. And then I'm a trustee of other organisations. One recently is the Royal Gunpowder Mills, just north of the M25. And at the moment, I've come in there to be a trustee to drive innovation and sustainability within a heritage site. So the idea is to help regenerate the heritage site using climate change, innovation, retrofitting within that historic setting, to be able to regenerate the site, but also to embed sustainability into it and the culture in that organisation. Okay,
sounds ideal to me. Do you think that how does having Chartered Environmentalist or having a Chartered Environmentalist on a board impacts their work as an organisation? You mentioned there you've managed to make some changes at the top. Is that something that can be done more readily if there were a lot more Chartered Environmentalists in board positions?
Well, yeah, because it gives you that people gives you that gravitas that people know you know what you're talking about. So I'm also a chartered engineer, and I've got a couple of other charterships in other areas. But if you're building a motor road, you want a chartered civil engineer. If you're building a building, you want a chartered structural engineer. When you come in to embed those sustainable principles into an organisation, it doesn't always naturally fall into an area. And you bring in chartered environmentalists to the party, you can say, well, I've proved myself in this area. I can take this on and lead with it and drive it forward because I have the knowledge base to do so. And because of the chartership, people are happy to support you in that. And so lots of these things are networking and stakeholder engagement. It gets you that buy-in so you can drive forward a program. And more in chartered environmentalists you can get in there, more gravitas that program will have moving forward. So yeah, it's a big thing. I push it quite a lot with the organisations I work with. I sit on the Chartered Environmentalist panel for the CIOB. So with the aim of driving more chartered environmentalists into the industry.
And for that, we are very grateful. Very grateful indeed. It's good to hear about your thoughts around having more chartered environmentalists in board positions. That might be something that we're focusing on in the next couple of years, but we shall see how it goes. So let's talk about a few years ago, maybe. When did you first develop an awareness for the environment and the impacts that you might have been having, maybe, or your work was having, that you could make a difference on?
So I've always... My family's always been one of these, get out into the countryside, always get out into... My uncle used to drag me bird watching. Drag me is the wrong word. He used to take me bird watching when I was a little kid. And I've always had that passion for the environment, animals, birds and stuff. My 5-year-old son loves animals. Anything I can talk about animals, he is all over that subject. And dinosaurs. So I've always had this love of the environment. And when I first went into engineering with defence, it probably wasn't the thing I was thinking about all the time. But what I would say probably about 20 to 15 years ago, I started to pick up the understanding that we were having a negative impact in what we were doing. So yes, we were driving forward, we were trying to help people, we were trying to be operationally build things, but then I started to understand like we're using a lot of concrete. That concrete has a huge carbon footprint, and that's probably not the best way for us to do that. And I just started to grow this greater and greater awareness. And then I started to reach out to other organisations. So I started to reach out to people and say, what are you doing? How can we work better? What are you doing? How can we reduce this impact? I used to, and I still do support it. I used to work quite a lot with heritage organisations, and I still believe that a lot of the sustainable practices we have going forward are just a new version of a historic one. That it's been done before. We're just putting innovation and technology into it and making a new approach on it. So I worked a lot with heritage organisations. SPAB, I don't know if you heard of them, Society of Protection of Ancient Buildings, run this great thing every year called their working party. They do a intensified week of working on a project, and I started attending that about 15 years ago, and then realized there was all these wonderful professionals giving up their time to go and work on a building, and they were working such a different way to the way I've been trained, and that just made me want to know more about it. So I built up these relationships, these partnerships, and sort of just looked at it and then realized that actually more of that we did, less the impact we're having, less the supply chain, learned more about sustainable goals. I said I did an engineering degree what had an element of climate change into it, and that just gave me the passion to want to know more. And then I ended up doing a master's in sustainability and adaptability in the built environment, where it was all about reducing your impact in there. And ever since, really, I said probably the last easily 15 years, if not to 20 years, I've been just driving that into every little time I could put it into a project. I have put it into a project, and probably about 10 years ago I started telling people I was actually doing that. Yeah.
Excellent. Good. So yeah, and then when I think it must have been when you were doing your masters, possibly, that you became a chartered environmentalist. Was that around the same time?
Yes, it was about the same time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, about that time.
And I think we've kind of covered this to an extent, but what does being a chartered environmentalist mean to you after your progression of knowledge in terms of sustainability and such like? You're now a chartered environmentalist. What does that mean?
In a way, it's a little bit of self-gratification that I've met a benchmark. All my work and knowledge and experience and the different relationships and things I've got involved in have brought me to a level that I have a I can benchmark my understanding, and that's great. Apologies, I've just got some friends around me as some pigeons. You might just hear them hear them in the background. But it gave me that benchmark of my understanding. But then also, when people understand you're talking to them from that perspective of being a chartered engineer, a chartered environmentalist, it's like being a chartered engineer, a chartered manager, whatever it is. It gives you that gravitas that people know you're talking about things from an educated background. So there's that personal piece, but it's also that professional piece. So yeah, I'm happy that I'm a chartered environmentalist, and I do think it gives me the right standing for the positions and work I do within sustainability.
Good to know. And why? So you're a member of CIOB. Is that because of your training background, or why did you go through the CIOB path?
So I'm a member of quite a few institutions due to the fact of the wide variety of things I get involved in defence. I'd say the Institution of Royal Engineers is an engineering institution. I was a trustee and I'm a chartered engineer with them. A member of the IET, chartered engineer with them, and I'm a member of a number of institutions. But I have done a lot of work with the CIOB probably over the last 15 years. And because a big part of what I do is not just designing engineering impacts, it's delivering them from the project management side, understanding the supply chain, the contracts, and all them sort of pieces. The CIOB embodied that side of what I do. So when I was working with them, actually, to be honest, they were the first institution to approach me to say, we're offering this, would it be something you'd be interested in? And as soon as I realized they offered it, I applied for it. So you could say part of it was the awareness that they offered the award on behalf of yourselves, but another part of it was I was very embedded into what the CIOB did at the time, and still am.
Well, in that case, excellent marketing work, CIOB. Excellent marketing work. Good communication. That's what I'd like to see. So what would you say to other people thinking about a career in the environment and potentially progressing towards Chartered Environmentalist registration?
So I would say whatever your career you're in today, the environment is part of your career. We all have an impact, no matter what it is we do. You have an impact on what is happening within the climate environment, and we need to have sustainable outcomes for everything we do. So I would say to anyone, no matter what you do, you should be embodying what you do within a method that has got a sustainable long-term as a way of working, and as a reduced impact in however you deliver whatever you do. If you want to specialize it, it's a great area to work in, because you will have impact no matter what industry you work in. If you're in the climate change sustainability area, you will have impact, because the world is waking up to the fact that we need to work in this way, that we need to sustain long-term sustainable outcomes, and we need to deliver. So if you're an impact-driven person like me, this is definitely an area to work in, because you will see the impact of your work. And why should you become a chartered environmentalist? Well, professional recognition is a key part in any industry. Whatever you do, professional recognition gives you a benchmarking against your peers that everyone recognises. And within this sector, within working in sustainability, within climate change, within environmental, carbon reduction, whichever part of it you want to look at, benchmarking yourself as a professional, as a chartered environmentalist, or one of the other awards within this sector, is definitely worth achieving as your stepping stone in your career as you move forward and benchmarking where you are and what your knowledge base. So I would definitely promote and support, if they need it, as a mentor, anyone going forward looking for this award.
Fantastic. Good words. We are hoping to progress the Chartered Environmentalist registration towards the likes of the Chartered Engineer. For example, as an engineer, chartership is the thing to go for, isn't it? It's pretty well known that to build a bridge, you've got to have chartership and that kind of thing. And that's where we're moving Chartered Environmentalist registration. Hopefully one day it will become pretty much a requirement for you to have within, and it showcases your standard of knowledge. And I think that's going to be extremely important.
That's one thing we're actually working on in defence at the moment, is trying to work out what the benchmark is for our projects. So we have hundreds of infrastructure projects. We have loads of people giving us advice on them infrastructure projects. What's the benchmark? What qualification do you need to have to be able to give us advice? And we are looking at Chartered Environmentalist, maybe the benchmark we go with.
Yeah. Well, there we go. If we can help in any way, let us know. Yeah. We'll certainly try. But we do know organisations who for certain environmental reports, that kind of thing, no matter what part of the organisation they're in, they have to be signed off by Chartered Environmentalists. So it's becoming more and more embedded within organisations, all sorts of different sizes, all sorts of different sectors. So the importance of it is certainly expanding. So this is quite a broad question, but what is next for you?
So because I am a serving military person, so I wear uniform as a day job. I don't always have a beard. This is just because I'm on holiday. So unfortunately, we sign a limited contract. So my contract runs out at the end of this year. I have to retire from defence after 26 years wearing the uniform and move on to a new role. So at the end of this year, I will be looking for a new role, so hopefully some sort of director or senior level role where I can have an impact in another area. It may be in partnership with defence, it might not be, but as I said, I'm an impact driven person. If the role doesn't allow me to have impact, I will go and find another one what does.
Okay, plenty of opportunities going forwards then. I didn't know that was how the career contracts and stuff work
Yeah, so if you wear a uniform, the maximum amount you can serve in a single contract is 26 years. It's 24 years, but you can get an extension to 26 years. If you're a junior rank, so I'm a warrant officer class 1, which is as high as you can become as a junior rank. You have to commission to be an officer to go further in your career, and then you can go up to 55 before they pension you off. But yes, we sign what we call a limited contract, and I've come to the end of mine, unfortunately.
Okay, the mind boggles, but wishing you all to look for what comes next. Yeah. Now, the final question, which is what we ask all of our EnvCast guests, is if you're able to influence world leaders for a day, what would be the first thing you would do or talk about or make sure that they did?
If I could sit down with world leaders and influence them for a day, I would talk to them about understanding the impact of their decisions. Because lots of world leaders have lots of things bearing down on them. Some of them may be political, some of them might be financial, social and stuff. But actually making them understand the long-term impact of their decisions. And sometimes that their short-term wins have a negative long-term impact. And that is specifically relevant when it comes to climate change. We need to move away from carbon-based fuels. A quick win in that area could have a long-term impact. So I would help them understand what their long-term impact are of their decision making, and hopefully that would have a beneficial to the wider globe and the 17 sustainable goals, which should be all our drivers within that.
I don't think you're the only one that said that, but I can see why you're not the only one that said that, because it's pretty important, isn't it? You'd have thought most world leaders might know a thing or two about long-term impact, but some might not. Who knows? We won't point them out. So, thank you very much for joining us today, Peter. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And thank you specifically for spending some time with us whilst on your holiday. I'm glad you managed to find a quiet park bench.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent. So if you want to follow in Peter's footsteps by becoming a Chartered Environmentalist and showcasing your environmental knowledge, please check out the Chartered Institute of Building website, which is CIOB.org. And we'll put the direct link to the CEnv page in the podcast description or YouTube description, whichever way you are consuming this content. Just give that a click or a tap. If you want more inspiration, check out the hashtag IamCEnv on LinkedIn or Twitter to find out more from a vast range of Chartered Environmentalists, and that's all in their own words. So have a look at that. That's happening. Well, that's happened over April. So have a look at that. Next month, we'll be on the topic of World Environment Day, with the EnvCast episode coming out about 2 days after the Global Awareness Day. This year, the UN theme is Beat Plastic Pollution. I'll see you then. Thank you for listening to today's EnvCast episode. If you'd like to hear more about the Chartered Environmentalist, Registered Environmental Practitioner, or Registered Environmental Technician registrations, please look at our resources available at socenv.org.uk. Alternatively, visit our YouTube channel where you can find a variety of environmental webinar series, registration guides, and various insights from registrants themselves. Just search for Society for the Environment on YouTube. To keep up to date with what's going on at the Society for the Environment, you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @socenv_HQ and via LinkedIn by searching for Society for the Environment with SocEnv in the brackets. We will release a new EnvCast episode on the first Wednesday of each month, so if you're interested in future podcasts, please do subscribe. You can subscribe and review through a variety of platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Castbox.